and this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Please consult with a qualified financial professional for advice specific to your situation. The views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast producers or sponsors. We make no representations or warranties regarding the accuracy or completeness of the content. Hi, my name is Bella Carrasco, and helping others feel more comfortable about investing brings a huge smile to my face. I pull together my resources to interview experts in each area of the due diligence process and answer how do you know questions when considering your future financial safety. But that wasn't enough for me. As an ex-collegiate soccer player, I know the parallels that athletes have with everyone else. That is, the fact that we all have several identities and the capability to add more skills to our repertoires, including investment knowledge. For these reasons, I also bring on athletes so that we can learn how they became confident in the investment world and learn the tips that got them there. We go deep into questions about many phases of the investment process, with the goal of helping you go from practice to game time confidently. This is the How Do You Know podcast. Today we are talking with Griff Whalen, who played football at Stanford and then proceeded with an NFL career where he played for many teams, ranging from the Patriots to the Raiders, among others, and now has his own real estate company. So, Griff, needless to say, you have an impressive resume, but how did you end up deciding to break up with football and go into real estate specifically?
Yeah, thanks. I got interested in real estate while I was still playing. So I was fortunate to play, as you said, for a bunch of different teams. Spent 7 years in the league, and uh, as I made a little bit of money and started trying to figure out what to do with it, became more interested in investing and really trying to educate myself on what to do. So I never hired like a financial advisor or an investment manager. I just tried to talk to mentor figures and educate myself the best that I could, and started doing some just really simple index fund and stock investing, and but really got interested in real estate. Found it harder to access and kind of get into, um, but over time, I mean, I really liked how um, kind of tangible and hands-on it can be, as well as the like cash flow fundamentals of it and the long-term value creation. So um, those those really drew me to it. So I knew kind of when I retired that that's what I wanted to get into. And yes, was fortunate. I did a few different things more in the single family space initially, and then moved to Austin, reconnected with a former Stanford classmate of mine who had just left a real estate private equity company to start a business. So we started working together in Austin, pursuing primarily multifamily real estate, and been for about a little over 4 years now. We've been doing that.
That's awesome. And I would echo everything you said about real estate. That's what drew me to it too. But did you work for anyone else before you two started your own business?
Um, not not post football, no. Although I didn't realize it at the time, but I learned a lot from my football days of just like uh, kind of the corporate side too. Um, I mean, I make comparisons all the time from what I learned with different NFL teams, but each team is a totally separate company and organization, and they're all run differently.
Yeah.
The cultures are different, the structures are different, and like I said, I didn't really realize it at the time, but I took away a lot about what type of leadership I saw, both from ownership, from front office folks, from coaching staffs, uh, to how, how they managed their employees and how that flowed down to, us as players. We were employees too. So I did work for other people in my playing
Right.
career, and didn't learn anything real estate specific there, but learned a lot about just um, maybe the corporate side and workplace interactions and things like that.
No, there's so many key things that you take from sport. My dad always used to say sports are a microcosm of life because you have to deal with so many different personalities. You learn discipline, you learn all of these skill sets, and it's not just applicable to sport. It's applicable to almost every facet of your life. And I know earlier you mentioned that you did not work with a financial advisor, and I don't either, but just wondering, is there something in particular that led to that decision?
Yeah, it was just one of my kind of family friend mentor figures who I think recommended. I can't remember the name of the book, but like a really short, like 40 or 50-page book, basically saying you could accomplish the same thing with index funds by yourself as you could like paying somebody else in most
Yep.
cases. So it was really
Right.
just one piece of advice, and I also liked the idea of like forcing myself to um, learn and be a little more self-sustaining and responsible for my decisions too.
And I always say no one's going to look after your portfolio, your investments, your money as much as you would yourself. So just having even a little bit of knowledge is so important. But I have read similar statistics that say it's like somewhere like 97 or 98% of people can't outperform the index funds or the S&P. So it's a very small percentage that can. And so I'm going to take my odds somewhere else. Knowing what you know now, what would you have done differently to start your investment journey?
Um, I wish I had known someone doing what I'm doing now sooner, and had access to real estate
Mm.
investments earlier on. It it's tougher to find. You can't just hop on whatever platform and buy a stock. Is I mean, there are some options, I guess, now to do some things like that. But um, it's a different to me. It's a little bit different threshold where you need to ideally find um, a sponsor, and like hopefully it's somebody you either know a little bit or like give you some reason to trust, because I think that's a really important piece of it, is just who you're investing in, who's managing that underlying asset too. But I would have loved to have had access to that sooner, gotten the experience and kind of learning with that, but also just some of the cash flow and tax benefits that you get with those type of investments too.
Mentorship is so key for a lot of different reasons. You just get more exposure, you learn from their mistakes, and then you hopefully aren't making those. So I definitely hear you there. Do you wish you started investing earlier too?
Yeah, of course. I don't think it's possible to start investing too early. I guess I remember my dad as a kid just every once in a while showing me like newspaper articles or like something where it kind of described the difference between, compounding wealth, and like the difference between starting at age 30 or age 40 or age 20, and like how drastically different those look. So I did have that, like even that simple concept instilled early, and I knew that was something I wanted to take advantage of as soon as I could.
Right. Yes. Compounding is so powerful. Yeah. You just see those graphs. It leaves you speechless, I guess. But it sounds like you learned about money growing up. Is that who kind of taught you? Is it your dad that taught you early on? Or how did you learn about money?
Yeah, I think from my family, I don't think my family was sophisticated in investing. I learned a lot about just, I think, being responsible, like saving and spending wisely. Like two really simple things. One I just mentioned from my dad, and my mom has a finance background, so she understands money quite well. And one of the like first lessons I learned from her was just like how to use credit cards and um, use them, take advantage of points and rewards, but pay it off every single month and almost treat it like a debit card where you don't use it if you don't have the money to pay it off. And I learned that young and was surprised growing up that a lot of people didn't know that, and you can get into a lot of trouble with credit card debt and the way that can pile up on you. So it's I know there's different things that happen. It's not always possible to avoid, but I think just the general kind of frugality, responsible nature, and then a couple lessons like that is mostly what I learned from my family growing up.
That's great. And were there any other important people who helped you along the way? I know you mentioned a mentor too, but anyone else?
Definitely both parents. Again, my mom has finance background. My dad has worked in PR most of his life and started his own company at one point as well. So, they, especially going through, I actually was able to deal with kind of NFL stress better, I think, and starting your own business, also having like a wife and kids now, and like extra pressure there.
Right.
Has been much harder, and I've relied on them a lot more to just like vent to and talk about. Gosh, like this is happening now. I'm just having people around to bounce things off of. But yeah, in addition to that, definitely some mentor figures, and very fortunate to have like a strong Stanford network that um, is helpful in so many ways, like advice, networking, fundraising. All sorts of ways where that yeah can't can't overstate how helpful that's been too.
That's a really good point. I think that's something that's often overlooked with investing is having a good community around you. I mean, it may sound silly, but having someone to vent to about finances or like you were saying, different stresses in your life. It always shocks me about how many people have already gone through what you're going through or might have known someone or just they always seem to have some piece of advice. So just inserting yourself into some sort of group or support or community is a key piece to all of this, I think.
Yeah, that's been really helpful for me just on stressful days, having people to talk to. The other thing that um, I found really helpful was a couple years ago, I started listening to another podcast. It's called the Founders Podcast, and each episode covers um, successful founders from all sorts of different industries and sectors. But it's cool to hear the story, and without fail, every single time, all of them hit rock bottom and had they were either going through bankruptcy or right on the edge of bankruptcy or failed at this and had to try something else. And so just as we've gone through our own difficult times, that was like really encouraging just to know that that's kind of just the nature of
Yeah,
doing your own thing and being an entrepreneur. And um, you know you you're gonna go through tough times, and it's all about how you can either get through it and problem solve your way out of it or pivot to something else. And it's just the nature of the beast, I guess.
exactly. It's not going to be this nice linear line. It's going to be squiggly and painful sometimes. Earlier, you mentioned the tax advantages that you didn't know about previously with real estate. Is there any other investment advice that you weren't aware of before you got into it?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots now, kind of being on the other side, where now um, now I'm basically sourcing deals and putting them together and then raising money from investors. So I think, gosh, lots of things, but probably the biggest thing is like trying to understand the risks involved, and like just approaching it
Mm-hmm.
from that perspective and like trying to figure out the right questions to ask. And as a new or an experienced investor, I think that's where you could really benefit a lot from having second opinion from somebody else, where you might not know what to ask, and it's, it's not that hard to put a really fancy looking presentation together and with great looking returns. And so having somebody, if it's not you, having somebody who can give you a second set of eyes and like really kind of ask the right questions to understand like what are the risks involved. Upside looks great, that's awesome, but I think that's a really important key for people to understand is when you're investing, you're putting your money at risk. So like what are those risks? And ideally you're not losing money. And of course you want to have good returns and make money, but I think that's probably the biggest thing I would um, talk about.
And that's exactly why I wanted to start this platform and make this whole curriculum of like, okay, this is what I do when I go look at an investment. There's going to be risks with anything, but you have to take those risks to get the reward. And that's where, like, again, having those mentors or communities or someone that you can talk to about a specific project or asset class is super helpful, because if you don't necessarily know what to look out for, if they've been in it for a little bit longer than you, they can definitely point out some things that you might not have been thinking about.
Also, I think that um, to your point, like taking risks are okay, and you just want to like be thoughtful about your own situation. So if you're kind of near retirement and you've got a little bit of money available, you probably don't want to take a huge risk, even though it has like more upside. But if you're younger and you're high earning and you've got some expendable income and you've got some in less risky investments, but you want to take a bucket for riskier investments with way more upside, it can make a lot of sense if you understand what the investment is and you've got enough conviction. I think it's important to just understand your situation too, and just because it's um, a riskier investment with higher returns is right for somebody else might not be right for you and your situation.
Yes, exactly. Knowing where you are, knowing thyself, and being able to
Yeah,
then mold your portfolio with that is another huge assessment that you need to do, which is why I think it's important to have almost like a business plan for your portfolio so that you know where you're going and you don't get distracted. And I know that there's a lot of different investment options out there, but some might not be for you. And you that comes from knowing and planning at the onset. When you were in the NFL, you were saying that you were in index funds and now you're doing real estate. So was that while you were in the NFL, or what was your investment look like during that time?
yeah. I think while I was in the NFL, I started um, doing some index funds and like a few stocks kind of right away as soon as I had money available. I saw a couple of real estate opportunities, but didn't feel like I had the understanding to feel comfortable with it. Didn't know the sponsor very well, and so I don't think I did any real estate investing other than like we bought our own house and fixed it up, and then we ended up selling it. And after a couple of years, that was kind of our little family investment, I guess. But yeah, didn't do any real estate investing besides that while I was in the NFL. Again, didn't have like the understanding to feel confident in myself, and didn't know. I wish I had known somebody doing what I'm doing now, to just have more access to that.
Right.
And I would have liked to take part in that sooner.
It always is amazing to me how when you just put something out there, it can come back to you. So, for example, maybe go back in time, you were in the NFL, you wanted to invest in real estate. And maybe if you just like ask some teammates or ask some coaches or trainers, like, hey, I want to get into real estate. Do you know anyone that I can talk to? Even if that person doesn't know, they might know someone else who might know someone, sort of thing. So even just like talking about it can be helpful, and you never know what can come back to you.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, one of the things that I saw was an introduction from a teammate. So that made it a little more compelling, just knowing that a teammate was like had invested with that person before and they were doing it. Yeah, I think I know some guys playing now that do, I think, a better job of that, of like sharing investment ideas with each other and talking about it. And I think that's really, really great for them to do that.
No, yes, that's great. And referrals are definitely helpful because, like you said, it does give you a little bit peace of mind. But something that I always encourage as well is like make sure you do still do your own due diligence and not just trust that person completely. And again, it goes to your point. It's like, well, what if I don't know what I'm doing? But hopefully, if as long as you can at least have a second opinion on it from someone completely unrelated, it could be a little bit helpful. It sounds like you're in index funds and real estate, so are you allocating to anything else, or is how are you diversifying beyond that?
No, I mean, right now, pretty heavily allocated into the stuff that I'm actually working on in real estate. And so I think that'll change long term, like as hopefully this business continues to grow over the next 10, 20 years. I would see myself diversifying more into diff, you know, different asset types, more stocks again. But right now, I think uh, there's not a ton of diversification right now. Like we're still like pretty startup-y feeling. We co-invest on everything we do and try to create as much alignment as we can. So I don't have the funds to just put money in too much else right now.
That makes sense. Just kind of going all in on what you have now, which I'm sure was a very scary decision. But if you have a reserve of some kind, I think that probably makes it a little bit of an easier choice.
Yeah, and I've always kind of liked the Charlie Munger strategy of like, not being afraid of more concentrated bets when you've got a lot of conviction around it. And I think we have that in what we're doing in the company we're building here.
And also just knowing what you know and sticking to that, because I think sometimes we get in trouble when we do try to veer off course. So again, makes sense that you're just kind of going all in for it. What do you guys look for in an investment?
We always want to understand what the risks are. And then we look for value opportunities. So where can we create some value with real estate? I think the location is really important. The ability to cash flow, the ability to appreciate over time, kind of a wider view of market fundamentals and like what city are you in, what area are you in, and then the micro submarkets of what street are you on, what neighborhood are you in, what are the, what, how is that trending, that area, and then the property itself, what is there potential, is there some strategy we can implement to create.
And it's always interesting to see what your perspective is versus someone else's, because someone could be like, oh, that's overvalued, or it's just completely gone. Whereas someone else can come in and have a different strategy for it or have a different financing plan for it. And you can actually see the value that you can add. So there's a lot of different mindsets out there too.
And nobody's got a crystal ball, so in real estate in particular, that's why it's important to understand the risks and the downsides and hopefully some of the potential. But then there's also a lot of luck involved. And like if you can understand the risks and avoid bad investments, some of your good investments are just gonna like catch a windfall with some major anchor, somebody coming to the same submarket and now your property value has doubled. There's stuff like that happens too that can really reward
Yeah.
you just by being lucky if you can just avoid the you know bad investments or making mistakes in that way.
Right. I was actually reading The Psychology of Money earlier this year, And one of the points in the book was that people try to predict and try to have these crystal balls, but what they can't predict are these black swan events. And they always seem to happen, whether it's COVID or whatever it may be. And so those are the things that you can't plan for. But that's, again, what we were talking about, the risk reward. You just have to take that plunge, do your homework, and see what happens in a way.
Yeah, that's right.
Aside from the lack of a financial advisor, do you work with anyone else on your team who helps with your investments, like a CPA or a tax strategist or a business attorney or anything like that?
Yeah, well, for our company and what we do, yeah, we have a lot of sort of third party consultants. So we've got tax tax preparers that do all of our tax reporting, which is a pretty heavy lift because it's not just for us, but it's also for all of our investors that, that need tax reporting done as well.
Mm-hmm.
Almost everything we do involves some sort of legal contract, and those are talking about risk. Those are just important as anything else of just having a good attorney who can protect you in those ways, because it's again it's trying to think about every possible scenario that could come up and how to protect yourself in that situation. So good attorneys, and then we use all sorts of different other consultants, architects, engineers, general contractors for new construction, environmental consultants, and companies for existing properties that we acquire, title companies that we like to work with. There's banks that we like to work with. So there's a huge kind of network around us now that started with just some referrals and has grown over time, and those relationships have grown and strengthened over time.
Yeah, and like we started the conversation with about the sports and how it applies to the real world, this is another example of that. It's like you can't do it yourself. You have to have a team around you to get to the goal.
Totally, yeah. So yeah, we've got, our company, we've got our own team, and then we've got a broader team around us. But yeah, I think about that all the time, how valuable just that sports background is of um, a bunch of different things, handling adversity, believing in yourself, and then, like working with others and being accountable to other people, communicating with other people, communicating under pressure. There's all sorts of stuff like that that I think just help us operate better.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. All right, well, great. I would love to end with a quick fire round of questions, starting with your favorite restaurant.
Hmm. Uh, that is a tough one. I think I would say, man, one of my favorites here in Austin is Taco Deli. Just, I love Taco Deli. Yeah, I would say that's pretty high up there. I'm sure there's more I'm forgetting. I always never turn down Taco Deli.
Yeah, it's funny because when I came back to Texas after living in the Midwest for 10 years, people raved about Taco Deli. And I am more of a Granny's or Veracruz girl. So I will always trump, like, those will always trump Taco Deli, but I'm in the minority there, I think.
I I just had Veracruz for the first time, like maybe 6 months ago, and it was great too. So I wish I had
Yeah,
tried that sooner.
I know. It's a hard question. Second one, what is your least favorite trip?
I don't know if I've had any like bad trips. I would say the only thing that I would think of is just traveling for sports, like going to
Yeah.
New England and losing to the Patriots again, or that's not a good trip.
Right. Yeah. Or sometimes you don't even really get to explore the cities that you're visiting, which you're just like seeing the hotel room and the field and the locker room, and that's about it. Last question. What is your favorite piece of media to stay up to date on the news?
Right now, I'm probably on the Austin Business Journal the most, but then Wall Street Journal. Other than that, kind of like random and everything. I like to when I have time, I like to see a lot of different perspectives and try not to get like too anchored in one source.
I'm so happy you said that, because that's something I did learn early on and I'm very appreciative for, is just making sure to get both sides of the aisle, the equation, because that will help you make a better and informed decision. It's not good to be biased towards one side or the other, and you can just gather your own data and then make an informed decision from there.
Yeah, totally agree.
Griff, thank you so much for being on. Why and how should people reach out to you?
If you're interested in learning more about Austin real estate or what we do, feel free to reach out. I can probably email is the easiest thing. It's just griff@narrowroad.com. And yeah, like always, I think another thing I've learned is just the value of continuing to network and meet new people. So that's something I didn't do a great job of when I was younger, and focus more on now. So happy to connect with anybody who's interested in learning more.
That's awesome. Better late than never.
Yep.
Well, thank you again. I hope listeners are inspired to know the importance about thinking financially in the future. So again, thank you. Until next time, adios. If you are ever interested in a recap with the main points discussed throughout the podcast episode, check out the Q&A series, because we dig deeper into the concepts discussed, and you can follow along on YouTube if that's preferred. If you find any value in this show and want to support it, it would be awesome if you texted someone right now about it. You can say you have a podcast recommendation that you think they should listen to, and then ask them to get back to you with their thoughts. Anything helps, and I really rely on the amazing investors like you to spread the word. Thank you so much for listening, and please feel free to reach out at any time.